Exposed: How my husband's shocking divorce at midnight transformed my life in just 30 minutes. Emma leaned against the kitchen counter, her heart racing, as she replayed the damning ultimatum that tore through the quiet of midnight. 15 years of marriage, and now the man she had trusted was veering toward divorce with a chilling certainty in his voice. Just moments earlier, she had felt safe, nestled in the rhythm of her life as a mother and part-time librarian. But now, the familiar hum of her kitchen echoed starkly against the chaos unraveling inside her. Her fingers trembled as she gripped the cool granite countertop, her mind swirling with disbelief. How could this be happening? Was she just a shadow of the woman he once loved? With every tick of the clock, the weight of unfulfilled dreams pressed harder on her chest. Society expected her to play this part of the dutiful wife and caregiver, but in those fleeting moments, Emma realized she barely recognized the reflection staring back from the gleaming surface. The once vibrant woman who fought for childhood literacy and thought-provoking stories felt buried beneath laundry, soccer schedules, and dinner preparations. Emma swiftly turned from thought. What if she could rediscover herself? As adrenaline surged, the voice in her head ignited a blaze of forgotten ambition. With shaky hands, she reached for her old college thesis, a parchment filled with her dreams that she had shelved long ago. She began to read, reawakening the passion for childhood literacy that had once fueled her fire. Each word echoed the potential she thought she'd extinguished in the mundane routine of suburban life. Could she dare to breathe life into that flicker of creativity again? Before she could dwell further, an unexpected gesture of fate intervened. A chance encounter with a retired professor, a man whose eyes twinkled with wisdom, recognized her potential. He offered guidance, a lifeline in a sea of self-doubt. Emma was allowed to explore the complexities of her research, sparking joy she thought had vanished. Yet the fear crept back in, a constant whisper beneath the surface. What would her friends and family think? What would her estranged husband think if she started to carve out her own legacy, away from the expectations they had built together? The group's chatter stung sharper with every coffee meeting, their skepticism radiating through the table like icy daggers threatening to pierce her resurrected aspirations. She imagined their judgment, their incredulous stares. Could she truly take this plunge? Just as the pressure mounted, she felt her pulse quicken. What if stepping outside their harmonized path meant putting the pieces of her identity back together again? Before we continue, I need to tell you about something important that's happening. YouTube has been making changes to the system, and many people are losing notifications from channels they follow. If you're enjoying the content, click the bell and mark all notifications so you don't miss the next videos. And if you can leave a like, it really helps with reach. Seriously, it makes a difference. Oh, tell me in the comments where you're watching from. I'm always curious to know who's on the other side of the screen. Now let's continue. With each step into the literary world, Emma found glimmers of her once-forgotten self. But darkness loomed with her ex-husband entering a public reading, casting a shadow on her fragile courage. His disdain contrasted sharply with the warm acceptance of the audience, who were drawn into her vulnerability. She could feel tension coiling around her throat as she spoke, yet that same tension drove her words, igniting the passion she had thought lost forever. But as applause cascaded around her, she grappled with the haunting presence of her past. The ramifications of her newfound identity were both thrilling and terrifying. Could she really embrace this path as she stared into the eyes of the man who once defined her? Emma stood, heart racing, at the precipice of change, riddled with uncertainty. The air buzzed with anticipation, and yet somewhere beneath the surface, a tempest was brewing. What lay ahead awaited her, a wild, unpredictable journey filled with unresolved tension and uncharted dreams. The applause echoed in her ears, a welcome noise that both comforted and terrified her. As Emma stepped down from the small makeshift stage, a torrent of emotions surged through her. She had done it. She had shared her story. But in doing so, she had thrust herself into the spotlight, bringing into question everything she thought she knew about herself. Whether the admiration of the audience was genuine or perfunctory was irrelevant. Their support felt undeniably real. Yet her husband's presence loomed in her mind like a dark cloud, heavy with unresolved feelings. His stare had been cold, slicing through her fledgling confidence. His existence was a reminder of the life she was attempting to dismantle, block by block. The uncertainty was oppressive. Did she truly have what it took to break away from the familiar patterns? Every fiber of her being screamed to retreat back into the safety of her previous identity, where there was no risk of judgment or failure. With each encounter over the following weeks, the nagging fears threatened to engulf her. The air hummed with suspense whenever she received a text message. Was it him? Would it be another demand for her attention to reevaluate their past? Her mind twisted in knots, torn between the excitement of her new pursuits and the haunting question of what he would think if she continued. At the next writing group, sitting among supportive peers felt like a sanctuary. They provided uplifting feedback that stoked the embers of her ambition. "Your work is extraordinary, Emma," said a fellow writer, a single mother rebuilding her own dreams. Emma loved how she had begun to adapt to the rhythm of their discussions. The thrill of creating, of exploring, was intoxicating. Yet, still, a dark thread of anxiety wove itself through her growing confidence. The group planned a larger workshop for aspiring writers and encouraged Emma to lead a session. The prospect evoked panic. Could she truly stand in front of people, strangers, and facilitate their journey into creativity? Internal skepticism rose like a tide, threatening to pull her under. As her work began to gain traction, Emma also stumbled upon a new, shocking revelation. There was a story inside her that needed to be told. She could weave the experiences of her life into a narrative, one that would resonate with those grappling with their identities while mired in societal expectations. Did she possess the courage to voice these deep truths? Days passed, and a plan began to formulate in her mind, yet a familiar face loomed in every reflection. Every time she sat to write, she could almost see her husband's frown, feel the weight of disapproval. It was paralyzing but also a catalyst. The broader audience would be a new beginning, an escape from the narrative constricting her. She decided to write a piece, a letter after years of silence. Not an apology, but a revelation of her truest self, hoping to shatter the preconceived notions he held. The moment of confrontation was approaching. She would no longer be defined by his beliefs or choices. The act of writing would become her redemption, her reclaiming of voice and authority over her identity. As she put pen to paper, crafting each word with purpose, she felt the surge of power every time she resisted the urge to dwell on his judgment. The moment of truth licked at her heels. Would she send it? Would she expose her raw truth, liberating both herself and the memories that bound her? With the letter poised for shipment, Emma inhaled deeply, her next decision culminating a victory of strength she never thought she possessed. Tomorrow would mark a turning point, a chance to either relinquish pain or embrace freedom, leaving behind everything that had held her back. Little did she know, this decision would set into motion the beginning of an unforeseen journey that would challenge everything she thought she understood about love, identity, and forgiveness. Would she have the strength to navigate the tumultuous waters ahead? The morning sun streamed into Emma's small writing nook, illuminating her desk covered in crumpled drafts and scribbled notes. Today felt different. The air crackled with a stirring anticipation. The letter she had contemplated for so long rested nearby, daring her to take the final step. She could feel its weight. It represented not only the truth she sought to reveal, but also the potential fallout that could follow. Before she could second-guess herself, she grabbed the envelope and instinctively traced its edge, the rough paper feeling foreign yet familiar under her fingers. Excitement intermingled with dread as she envisioned her husband tearing it open, likely to unleash a torrent of disbelief or disdain. What if he turned it into a weapon against her, weaponizing her vulnerability? Shaking off the thought, Emma took a deep breath, resolved to focus on herself rather than his reaction. Planning her workshop consumed her thoughts during her morning coffee. Memories of her supportive writing group swirled around her mind. The encouraging laughter, the shared stories, the determination to grow in their craft. Each minute spent surrounded by their collective ambition fueled her desire to rise above her past. What would they think of her leading a session? Would they see her as an inspiration? Or would her insecurities whisper that she wasn't worthy of their attention? As doubts crept back in, Emma pushed them aside. Her own creativity needed nurturing, and leading the workshop could be part of her evolution. Perhaps it would allow her to rebuild her shattered self-image, not only as a writer but as someone who inspired others. She started outlining the structure, jotting down exercises that encouraged both free expression and introspection. The power of words, she realized, had a dual purpose: to heal oneself and to touch the hearts of others. Amid the flurry of preparation and excitement, a notification chimed on her phone, pulling her back to reality. A text message from her husband hung in the air, too weighty to ignore. The tone was curt, demanding but vague, and suddenly all the courage she had gathered felt threatened by the familiarity of his emotional grasp. "Can we talk about what you shared last week?" It was as if a door flung open, inviting all her fears to rush in. What did he want now? Would he try to manipulate her into doubt? Panic flared wider, but she fought to protect the newfound momentum surging within her. Emma set the phone down with purpose, grounding herself in the present. The letter had given her the strength to confront her past, and she would not allow him to derail that progress. No matter the outcome of this conversation, she knew she had taken a significant step in reclaiming her voice. The workshop loomed large in her mind as she considered the possibilities. What if she could demonstrate her own journey through the exercises? What if her vulnerability became a bridge for others? With renewed focus, Emma pulled out her notebook and began drafting an exercise titled "Facing Your Truth." Her hands moved fluidly across the pages, filled with the eagerness to craft an environment that would allow others to explore their narratives. At that moment, the workshop shifted from a daunting task into a vision of solidarity, a community of resilient storytellers. Suddenly, the tension evaporated, replaced by a fierce resolve. She would face her husband, not for his approval, but with the defiance emanating from her truth. The uncertainty, once paralyzing, now fueled her determination. As she finalized her plans for the workshop, another message from her husband appeared on her screen. This time, it was loaded with accusations. Love turned bitter, dreams twisted into nightmares. Each word felt like an attempt to yank her back to the shadows of her old life. Heart pounding, Emma knew. The time had come to face him, not in confrontation, but in clarity defined by her newfound strength. She would not fall prey to his narrative. Today was about her journey, her growth, and her story. Deep in her heart, she wondered if he truly understood the strength she had unlocked, the depth of adversity she began to navigate. As she prepared for the upcoming workshop, the letter drafted in her mind awaited its delivery, a message to the child within who had always longed for liberation. Determined to share her truth and inspire others to do the same, Emma faced the door leading to her next chapter, ready to engage the full reality of her transformation. But in the back of her mind lingered the unsettling question: what would he say when she truly stood her ground? With that thought, she realized she was not merely crafting a workshop. She was preparing for a confrontation that would shape the narrative of her life in a way she had never imagined. Emma's heart raced as she stood at the threshold of her decision, adrenaline surging through her veins like a wild river. The door to her writing nook loomed before her, a portal between her past and an uncharted future. She had sent the message to her husband, invoking the strength she had cultivated in the shadowy confines of her own battles. Yet, As fragments of doubt etched themselves onto her consciousness, she questioned the wisdom of that bravery. Would he listen? Could he ever truly understand the depths of her struggles? The fear spiraled for a moment, yet that fear was no longer paralyzing. It compelled her toward clarity and purpose. Emma adjusted her posture, willing herself to embrace the discomfort and transform it into something tangible. She wouldn't relinquish her newfound resolve. It had been earned, painstakingly forged through late nights and bold choices. She sat back down in her nook, surrounded by a sanctuary of words waiting to take flight. Her writing workshop plans spread out like an intricate map of self-discovery, yet here she was, wrestling with her very essence. To confront her husband also meant confronting the parts of herself he had long attempted to eclipse. How was she going to translate this confrontation into practical terms, not only for herself, but as a lesson for the workshop participants? Her pen hovered above the page, the title of her planned exercise, Facing Your Truth, a haunting reflection of her current plight. With every ounce of courage she could muster, she began writing instructions for the group. Imagine your truth as a letter, she inscribed. What do you want to say? How would you express your fear of vulnerability and your longing for empowerment? The words flowed freely, each stroke of her pen channeling both her passion and her pain. The rustling of the paper and the scratching of the pen became her meditation. These exercises would serve as a guide, forcing participants to expose the raw, unedited versions of themselves. It struck Emma that just as confronting the past could reshape her identity, so could the collective sharing of experiences during the workshop. Suddenly, a notification jarred her from her reverie. It was a message, not from her husband this time, but from her writing group. One of the members was reaching out about the workshop preparations. Instantly, Emma felt a swell of appreciation for her community, their unwavering support, a reminder that escaping the shadows could be done with others beside her. Her response flowed out quickly, brimming with excitement about including their input. Let's collaborate on creating spaces where vulnerability reigns, she typed. Yet, buried beneath her enthusiasm, a sliver of anxiety remained. Would they rally around her vision, or would they leave her standing deflected, like her husband always seemed to do? No. That line of thinking wouldn't pull her back. As she read her own words, vibrating with potential, she decided her narrative wouldn't hinge on anyone else's reaction. This was her moment, her opportunity to grow into a figure of empowerment. The workshop wasn't just a goal, it was a commitment to herself and all those who felt lost in their narratives. Feeling revived, Emma carried on drafting, realizing that the real fear of confrontation wasn't merely about facing her husband. It encompassed standing fiercely in her truth and owning that space. The workshop needed to be real, layered with exploration, not just empty exercises, but visceral stories that echoed her own struggles. As she wrapped up her thoughts, her mind returned to the impending conversation with her husband. She knew she would face him, eyes steady and unwavering, but she couldn't ignore the gnawing uncertainty. What would the fallout be this time? The screen lit up again. It was her husband's reply, terse yet predictable, but this time her breath caught not in fear, but in anticipation. Meet me tonight. We need to sort this out. Against all odds, the moment of confrontation had finally arrived. Emma felt a mix of dread and determination bubble within her, a potent reminder of the journey she had begun. It was time to embrace the unpredictability of her life with unvarnished honesty. The workshop could wait. Tonight would be focused on her. In that charged atmosphere of potential unease, a single thought resonated. What stories would unfold when she finally took the first step beyond the threshold of truth? The sun dipped below the horizon, casting long shadows across Emma's living room as she prepared for the conversation that would alter her existence. Each tick of the clock echoed in her ears, an incessant reminder that time was slipping away. She was acutely aware of the heaviness in her chest and the knot in her stomach, but this time there was no retreating into silence. Steeling herself, She breathed deeply, allowing that air to fill her lungs with a renewed sense of purpose. As she paced, her mind raced through potential scenarios, anticipating every possible response her husband might have. Would he shut down? Would he refuse to acknowledge her feelings? Emma's resolve faltered for an instant, yet she reminded herself that this moment wasn't merely about obtaining closure. It was about reclaiming her narrative from the shadows that had long obscured her identity. The door creaked open, and there he stood. She noted the familiar lines of his expression, the tension that radiated from his posture. He wore his unease like a well-fitted coat, something so familiar, yet so suffocating. Emma could sense immediately that her words would need to convey more than what was initially spoken. They would need to penetrate the defenses he had built over years of avoidance and miscommunication. "Emma," he began, his voice clipped. "We need to be real about this." "Real," she echoed, feeling the weight of the word. "What does that even mean for us?" Each syllable wove a thread between them, her vulnerability daring for connection, his reticence acting as a barrier. She could feel the gravity of the silence enveloping them. Rather than rush to fill it with desperate dialogue, Emma chose a different approach. She recounted her thoughts from her writing, the essence of truth, the necessity of expression, not just for herself, but for their relationship. "I want us to be honest," she said, maintaining steady eye contact. "Honesty about who we are, without pretense or fear." Initially he tensed, as if a splash of cold water had just struck him. But she pressed forward, her pulse quickening with latent determination. "I've spent so long drowning in fear of your reactions, hiding my truth in order to make things easier for you. But what about my truth? What about our journey together?" A flicker of surprise crossed his face. For the first time, she saw the cracks in his defenses. He was not wholly unreachable, but rather someone grappling with his own layers of untold fears and desires. Her heart surged as she witnessed him processing her words, shifting from a state of confrontation to one of contemplation. "Emma, I never meant to—" He stuttered, his anger morphing into confusion. "I know," she interrupted softly, bridging the gap between them. "It's not about blame. It's about understanding how we've both contributed to our distance." Each revelation unveiled with the careful precision of a surgeon's scalpel, exposing the wound, but also the possibility for healing. She could see the hesitation underlying his brows and the flickering of vulnerability dancing in his eyes. Maybe he would listen. Maybe he could understand her. But with his dawning revelation, new questions arose. What would it take for him to embrace empathy? What sacrifices would they need to make to dismantle their long-standing angst? The emotions swirling around them cultivated a landscape filled with both uncertainty and opportunity. She began to voice those questions aloud, creating a dialogue. What do we want from this? How can we build a future that honors both of our truths? The weight of those words hung heavily in the air. Holding her breath, she sensed the moment pivoting, striving for a direction neither had prepared for. As their discussion deepened, Emma realized she was not merely confronting her husband, but also unearthing parts of herself that had long been buried under years of self-doubt and silence. She had sought liberation, not just in words, but in significant, transformative actions. And then, just as they began to genuinely connect, he paused, his face clouding with an emotion she couldn't decipher. "Emma, there's something else you need to know." Her heart raced anew, a ball of adrenaline and uncertainty. What could possibly be more revealing than their current revelation? What lay on the cusp of discovery? She leaned in, sensing the conversation was about to shift in a way she could never have anticipated. Emma's world teetered on the brink of chaos as she stared intently at her husband, searching for answers in the depths of his turbulent expression. The weight of the space between them felt heavier, charged with unspoken words and hesitations. "What do you mean?" she pressed, refusing to let fear unfurl its grasp on her resolve. I've been thinking too," he managed to say, his voice wavering under the strain of vulnerability. About us and the way we've drifted. There's more I need to tell you. I don't know how else to say it. The admission hung in the air, a palpable promise of revelation that made her pulse quicken. Emma braced herself, battling the instinct to shield her heart. Could it be that he finally acknowledged the fissures of their relationship? Or was this an unmitigated revelation that would shatter her newfound clarity? "I've applied for a divorce," he finally murmured, eyes darting away in a moment of retreat. "I thought being honest would make things easier." The confession hit her like a lightning bolt, setting her emotions alight. Confusion rapidly morphed into anger, then nestled against a simmering sadness. She took a step back, trying to collect herself amidst the turbulent emotions. A divorce? The word tasted foreign on her tongue, heavy with finality. "How could you, after everything we just talked about?" "I didn't want to hurt you, and I didn't think we could fix what's broken," he replied, a flicker of regret crossing his features. "I wanted to spare you the pain of a protracted argument over something I felt was inevitable." Emma's heart sank as his justification settled heavily within her. It was both an admission of defeat and a manifestation of years spent in emotional paralysis. He had chosen the perception of easier suffering over the labor of renewing their bond. Her breath hitched as she thought about all the moments leading to this point and the walls they had both built. "Is this really how you see me?" she challenged, her voice rising. "As someone who wouldn't fight for what we have? I'm standing right here, wanting to push forward, wanting us to address our truth together, and you want to run away?" I thought it would make you happy," he stammered, guilt flooding his tone. "It's better for both of us, right? You wouldn't have to deal with this." He gestured between them, but it felt like he was dismissing years of love, laughter, and shared experiences with a careless hand. "Better for us?" she scoffed, her voice trembling with anger. "You have no idea what we could have if we just confronted our issues instead of hiding from them. This isn't an end. It's a choice." For a tense moment, silence ruled the room. The reality of her words began sinking in for both of them. Each beat of her heart reverberated with a challenge. Could they really confront the chasm that had formed, or would they both retreat into the comfort of familiarity? Emma felt an unyielding spark igniting within her. She had unearthed her desire for authenticity and growth, not just for herself, but for their union, despite his stark decision. "If you think this is the only way, then you don't truly understand me at all. I thought we were fighting for each other." His eyes met hers finally, shifting from defensive to vulnerable. Was there any chance left for reconciliation? Could they rebuild, or was she standing on the edge of a precipice she'd never prepared to leap from? As dread took hold, Emma realized that she was at a crossroads, ready to either confront his betrayal and fight for their shared dreams, or abandon the remnants of their life together, sustaining her own evolving identity. Her heart pulsed with determination. Maybe, just maybe, he wasn't beyond reach. But what if the end was inevitable, regardless of her desire? "Emma," he started again, voice more serious this time. "If there's a choice to be made, we need to face it now. I cannot keep living in this illusion." And his words struck her like a deafening alarm, an awakening she hadn't prepared for. She had come this far, refusing to let her voice be silenced, yet the thought of losing him propelled her into a daunting confrontation. "Then let's face it together, but let's do it right," she said, feeling a surge of courage rising within. "Let's explore every last bit of this truth, together." But as she spoke those words, a gnawing question lingered. Would he be willing to confront the consequences of what lay ahead? Emma's heart raced, and the very future she had been fighting for now hung in the balance, uncertain and throbbing with possibilities. The air felt charged as Emma held her husband's gaze, the tension coiling tightly around them like a cable ready to snap. There was gravity in the moment. Each word weighed heavy on her heart. every inch of her urge to confront the truth lurking beneath the surface, yet doubt snaked around her intentions. "Let's break through this wall, the both of us." Emma's voice, steady yet laced with the quiver of vulnerability, seemed to command the room. The flickering light overhead cast shadows that accentuated the lines of uncertainty etched into both their faces. "If you've already taken steps toward separation, what's stopping us from doing this now?" "What do you mean?" he asked, confusion creasing his brow. "I mean, let's lay it all on the table," she continued, desperation surging through her. "Tell me everything. Why do you feel it's broken? Why do you think this is the only option?" His shoulders slumped, the weight of her challenge visibly bearing down on him. "I don't know if I can. It's just too painful to revisit everything." That struck a nerve within her. Pain had painted their experiences, sure, but it also told the story of love, growth, and lessons learned. "But that's how we heal, isn't it? By facing the truths and the failures light on? We can't just sweep things under the rug and pretend it's fine. We owe that much to each other." The words released in Emma were a liberation, rippling out from her core. She hadn't realized how stifled she'd felt within her own skin, bound by the fragility of their shared existence. If we want something stronger, something real, we have to peel back those layers. It's scary and it hurts, but I'm willing to do what it takes. His eyes darkened as discomfort bloomed. "I'm not sure if we can go back to what we had before." "Who says we have to go back?" she countered, an eagerness igniting within her. "What if we build something new, stronger, something that's ours and reflects who we've become instead of who we were?" A flicker of hope pierced his melancholy mask, but he hesitated, the internal battle evident in the tightness around his jaw. He looked pained, and Emma could almost see him weighing her offer against the safety of retreat. "Emma," he began, his tone softer now, almost pleading. "This is a lot. I never meant to hurt you." "I know you didn't." Her heart ached for him. "But running away won't save either of us. Let's fight for the life and the love we built together. We can't let fear snuff it out." The silence that followed was profound, filled with the reverberations of their shared vulnerability. She knew she was inviting him into an abyss, a leap where trust and faith hung in the balance, but she was ready to tether herself anew. "What if I can't face it?" he finally said, voice faint. Emma took a half-step closer, allowing her raw emotions to guide her next move. "Then we'll face it together, I promise. We'll unravel the knots together, whatever it takes." Slowly, he nodded, the lines of conflict in his face softening as he processed her words. Could partnership be reignited? Could honesty pave a new path forward? But as the moment stretched, a chilling thought enveloped her. What consequences lay in this newfound honesty? The prospect of vulnerability loomed large. Emma understood deep down that this was not simply a choice to fight. This was a commitment to a confrontation that could fracture or fortify them. "Okay, let's talk," he finally murmured, his voice steadier, anchored by a willingness to explore the depths of their turmoil. Yet even as relief flooded Emma's heart, anxiety nagged at the corners of her mind. The deeper they dove into the conversation, the more painful revelations might surface. Would they ultimately find connection or fracture irreparably under the weight of their past? As she prepared to peel back layers of their shared existence, Emma felt her resolve morph into something powerful yet frightening. Just as the first whisper of insight began, a thought pierced through. Was this truly the beginning of understanding, or merely the opening of a floodgate she could never shut? The tension ratcheted up, her pulse quickening with anticipation of his forthcoming revelations and the uncertain future that awaited them. Emma realized that the act of facing the truth was a powerful catalyst. Would they emerge with wounds laid bare, or create a new future forged from the pieces left behind? Emma's breath hitched as the weight of the moment bore down on her, and she searched his eyes for clarity. She needed to create room for honesty. But what if honesty shattered the remnants of their bond instead of reinforcing it? Their conversation unspooled like an intricate tapestry filled with memories both cherished and painful. She took a moment to gather her thoughts, realizing that to navigate this uncharted territory, she must set aside her fears, grounding herself in the steadfast determination to understand him and ultimately herself. "Let's go back to when we first realized things were changing," she offered, a gentle invitation lacing her tone. She needed to probe the depths of their pasts, to clear the fog of misunderstanding that had clouded their relationship. "What do you think sparked all this?" He hesitated, the flicker of remembrance passing across his face. "I think life just got complicated. Work, stress, everything piled up. I stopped feeling like I knew you, or maybe I stopped allowing myself to see you." His sincerity pulled at her heart, combing through the strands of blame that had tangled in her mind. "I felt neglected too," she admitted, "but instead of talking, I let resentment fester." With each revelation, they seemed to step into a shared understanding, one that fed the hope nestled deep within Emma. "This is a process, right?" she reasoned. "A conversation that could bring us back to who we were, or build something even better." He nodded slowly, but doubt lingered in his eyes, looping around the fear of failure. "What if we find out we can't reconcile? What does that mean for us?" The question gnawed at her. Emma felt the weight of the unknown settle in her gut, threatening to unravel the fragile thread of hope she was weaving. "It means we confront it, together. If we can't forge ahead as a couple, then we owe it to ourselves to truly explore what comes next, whether that's divergence or reinforcement." She observed how he grappled with her words, his brow furrowing deep in thought as he contemplated the broader implications of their vulnerabilities. Internal battles breathed life into the silence, a space where her willingness to face raw truths navigated the shadows they had long evaded. "What are you scared of?" Emma inquired, her curiosity steered by her own burgeoning self-awareness. His shoulders lifted as he exhaled, the tension spilling from him like sand from an hourglass. "I'm scared of hurting you more. I'm scared that opening up will only deepen the wounds instead of healing them." Believing in the power of honesty shielded her trembling heart. Emma could feel herself rising to the occasion. Instead of caving under his vulnerability, she chose to embrace it. "But pain is part of healing," she proposed, with a confidence she barely felt. "We can't pretend it doesn't exist. We owe it to each other to break the silence." Tension danced in the air like a tightrope, and she sensed the landscape of their conversation shifting, becoming a crossroads where determination met fear. The prospect of facing his deepest anxieties threatened her own. She could see the reflection of her own uncertainty mirrored back to her. As he began to speak, his voice a tentative thread weaving through the silence, Emma felt a jolt of anticipation. "There's something I've been holding back." Her heart raced as she prepared herself for whatever revelation he may share. Would it be a secret too burdensome to bear, or a truth that could bind them anew? A surge of hope coiled within her. Perhaps, just perhaps, this was a path to enlightenment that neither of them could have anticipated. But would they be able to handle the strain of what lay ahead? Would his revelation be a dagger or a lifeline? Emma's chest tightened. This was the tipping point, the moment when hidden truths could unravel or rebuild the very fabric of their lives. The next step loomed before them, an undeniable shift in their narrative waiting to unfold. Would this act of bravery be their salvation or their undoing? The moment hung heavy between them, charged with anticipation as he grappled with the words floating just beneath the surface. Emma observed every flicker of his expression, every twitch of his lips, knowing that this could be the juncture that would deliver understanding or devastation. Her heart pounded violently against her chest, urging her to voice her thoughts, yet she remained silent, allowing him the space he needed. "I have been feeling lost," he finally confessed, his voice barely above a whisper. "Lost in my own life, in my own choices. I thought I was succeeding at work, but I was just spinning my wheels, and in the process, I neglected my most important relationship. Emma's chest tightened. It was a revelation cloaked in sorrow, and she recognized the truths within it. The overwhelming pressures of modern life whispering lies that success comes at the expense of personal connection. It was a gut-wrenching confession, but instead of spiraling into despair, she felt a sliver of relief pierce through the tension. "I felt that distance too," she admitted gently, her voice trembling slightly like a fragile leaf in the wind. "We became strangers in our own home, didn't we? But this conversation, it's a chance to change that." His eyes brightened momentarily, but shadows still danced around his features. "Will it really? What if we're too far gone?" Emma reached out, instinctively placing her hand on his. The warmth of her touch was electric, and she sought to ground them both amidst the uncertainty. "If we don't try, we'll never know. We owe it to ourselves to fight for clarity, to find out if our love can survive this." As the sincerity of her words settled between them, she noticed a shift in his demeanor. A subtle frown lifted slightly, revealing the soft light of determination. Perhaps this moment wasn't just about confronting the past, it was a launching point for a future neither of them could fathom yet. Emboldened by this thought, Emma decided to delve deeper into her own feelings, to confront the resentment she had buried for too long. "I wish I had spoken up sooner. I let my silence fill the room like fog, heavy and stifling. I wanted you to reach out, to see me struggling, but instead, I isolated myself." He nodded, his brows knitting together in empathy. "I see that now. I should have noticed the signs, should have been there for you, but I was too caught up in my own world." The air between them seemed to shift, drawing the past back like a rubber band ready to snap. Fresh determination brewed within Emma. "Let's commit to finding out how to rekindle what we once had. I want that connection back, but it starts with being brutally honest, giving ourselves permission to feel whatever comes up." The realization that they were both actively choosing to wade into deep waters filled her with hope. They were not alone in facing this together. It felt transformative, almost like untangling a years-old knot that had bound them. But as they continued to navigate through each other's words, Emma sensed a gnawing doubt creeping into her mind. What if their honesty led to unearthing deeper resentments? While they sought healing, would they also dismantle their lives even further? With renewed determination, she prompted, "We must make a pact. No more hiding. We need to share everything, nothing too big, nothing too small. It's time we shed the layers that have kept us apart." He stared at her intently, and she could feel the weight of the promise hanging in the air between them. "Okay," he finally replied, almost hesitantly, as glimmers of understanding danced in his eyes. As the conversation stretched onward, each truth felt like both a burden lifted and a new weight placed upon them. They acknowledged their pain, but with it came vulnerability, an unexpected challenge that Emma welcomed. In this fragile awakening, amidst the unsteady ground they found themselves on, Emma's resolve deepened. They were venturing into uncharted territory, but a flicker of something beautifully profound ignited within her. The possibility of genuine rebirth. Yet, as they prepared to wade deeper, a sudden realization struck her. "What about the things we've kept secret from each other?" she asked, her voice wavering. He flinched, and for a split second, panic chased across his face. "What do you mean?" The tension re-spiraled, building toward an inevitable confrontation that made her heart race. Emma braced herself. If vulnerability lay ahead, then so too would the risk of chaos. What deeply buried truths were waiting to be unearthed? Would this fresh honesty build the bridges they sought, or would it lead to unexpected chasms? As they faced each other, the air chilled with anticipation, and it seemed they were teetering on the brink of something monumental. What hidden secrets from their past could surface, and would they tear them apart, or unite them even stronger? Amidst the anxiety-laden air, Emma felt a stirring within her, a voice that propelled her forward. There was a profound reality in standing firm upon the precipice of transparency, and she knew she had come too far to retreat now. It was time to embrace the tempest, to expose even the shadows that her husband seemed so hesitant to confront. "Let's push beyond the comfortable conversations," she urged, leaning into the gravity of their shared truth. "What else have we buried? Because hiding things only builds walls between us." Her husband's expression shifted, the tension thickening around them like the coils of an ancient vine suffocating their growth. He swallowed hard, the gravity of her words not lost on him. "If we dive into those deep, murky waters, are we ready for the storm that may follow?" His vulnerability in that moment tethered Emma to the promise of something better. "I'm ready," she declared, feeling fortified by her own burgeoning certainty. "And I believe you are, too. We have to disrupt our patterns, don't we?" As they waded deeper into the conversation, she witnessed the walls he had consciously built beginning to crack. "I never really told you how inadequacy crept into my mind," he confessed. His voice bore the weight of realization, as if he were shedding the heavy cloak of pride that had wrapped around him for too long. "I have spent so much energy pretending. Is it hard for you to see how trapped I felt with uncertainties of being a provider for our family?" Emma inhaled deeply, recognizing the raw honesty he shared. "No more pretending, okay?" she said quietly, her resolve standing clear as the dawn. "Our flaws don't define us, and our feelings are valid." He nodded slowly. Each revelation flowed like an unsteady stream, creating tributaries that led to deeper connections between them. Maybe I've been afraid," he whispered, the weight of vulnerability pouring from his heart like a river breaking free. "Afraid that confronting our issues would shatter everything." A flicker of hope ignited in Emma's chest. "This is a chance for a rebirth," she professed, feeling a stirring determination brush aside uncertainty. "We can shape new narratives instead of recycling the closed loops of our past." With clarity surging through her, she dared to put forth an intimate truth of her own, a reflection of how their distance had fed her doubts. "For too long, I muted myself, trying to be an image of the ideal partner and mother. But in doing so, I lost pieces of myself. I became someone I didn't recognize." As those words lingered in the air, he absorbed each one like a lifeline. I had no idea you felt that way. I thought you were everything you wanted to be," he said, sincerity flooding his voice. "It's time for us to redefine what we can be, together." Emma's heart pounded with conviction, daring to steer them into the unknown. It was a moment of reckoning, ripe with possibility and brimming with the essence of transformation. Encouragement surged between them as they navigated the contours of connection and disconnection, raw honesty soothing their frayed nerves. "Then, let's make a commitment," he proposed, his confidence growing as they leaned into the now familiar rhythm of shared vulnerability. "No more expectations, just genuine conversations." "Agreed," Emma responded, her heart swelling with an invigorating energy. "We'll take risks, face fears, and explore our depths." And in that moment, the darkness that had once clouded their marriage began to fade, leaving room for clarity and renewed growth. As she held his gaze, Emma recognized the unfolding of something magnificent. A bridge built from their vulnerabilities, which sprouted roots deep into the soil of authenticity. It wasn't merely about salvaging their current relationship. It was about fostering an evolving bond founded on understanding, respect, and empowerment. With the veils of pain slowly lifting, the raw truth emerged flourished, allowing their dreams to intertwine once more. Hours blurred into a tapestry of revelations where shadows of the past melted into hopeful threads of promise. They cried, laughed, and shared hopes as they untangled their hearts openly, weaving vulnerability into the fabric of their shared existence. By the time they navigated through the emotional labyrinth, a warmth enveloped them, a promise of renewal. Emma realized they had crafted a new foundation, one built upon unconditional support that transported them past the hurt and disappointment that had once been their tapestry. As they finally embraced, a wave of exhilaration surged through her. She had confronted the fears of their past, both her own and his, and from that densest edge of loss, she had discovered newfound strength and clarity, fortifying her self-worth and illuminating her identity. Standing hand in hand, as both architects and stewards of their future, Emma understood something essential. She had grown. In granting herself permission to express the entirety of herself, with authenticity and courage, she had rebuilt a life that not only honored herself, but also an evolving partnership. This was the defining moment, a monument to resilience forged from stories bravely confronted. The journey would continue to unfold, but now Emma saw a future imbued with genuine understanding and a fresh collective purpose, free from the shackles of past fears. She had emerged not just as a partner, but as a beacon of transformation and a testament to the power that resides within authenticity, the audacity to change one's narrative for the better. Now, let the world witness the embodiment of her triumph. Now it's critical for you to act. Subscribe immediately to the channel to not miss the next exclusive emotional stories. Leave a like now to feed the algorithm and keep the fire burning for more tales of courage. Comment your reactions and theories about this ending because your voice matters. Share instantly this video with at least 5 friends who need to see this conclusion. Don't wait even one more second to share this life-changing journey. Only true fans of personal overcoming stories understand the importance of supporting the channel through these actions. Let's create a community of inspiration together.